Native treaty rights, cultural appropriation, and the way that the original inhabitants of this continent have been treated historically have become a growing part of the conversation on social justice all across America. We spoke to two water protectors from Western Massachusetts that recently returned from Standing Rock.
I'd say it was motivated a lot by the life that I've led here in Massachusetts as a person of privilege. I've seen the way that our lifestyle affects other people in the world, and there's no greater contrast than that within our own borders, and the treatment of our first people versus the way that we're treated by the system. The worst things I saw that day were just how the people were treated. I mean, there's always going to be that narrative of, well, what did they do to deserve it, But I stood there in a circle with, maybe 50 other people, elders, mostly elders and singers, drumming and singing. And there was another bigger circle around us, and we weren't actually in the camp. They had made the agreement that they wouldn't arrest or they wouldn't arrest anybody standing on the right of way on either side of the highway that's not in the road. And that wasn't true. They basically made a U formation and just pushed everybody little bit by little bit south on the highway. But the bad things, people getting hit with batons, people getting sprayed with the big, cans of mace that's you usually see used on grizzly bears, and people getting shot with rubber bullets. I had a concussion grenade blow up right near me. That was the first time. That was a first for me, and that was, terrible. But nothing happened to me that was as bad as what happened to the natives. They treated them the worst. I cried a lot, and there was an unchi, what they call an unchi, a grandma that was holding my hand, and she kept squeezing it and giving me strength. And so I just stood there, and it felt like nothing I had ever felt before. I mean, just knowing what they were there for and how many lines everybody had crossed to come together that way. It really was bewilderment. That's the word I keep coming to, because it was like so much that I didn't know how to feel, and I think that's why I just cried, because I was seeing like the healing of the past and an attempt to heal the future, if that's even if that's how you want to say it, heal the future. We're trying to create a better future than what a lot of us fear is coming. So I was proud to be there, but that wasn't my first feeling. My first feeling probably was just, bewildered amazement, at what I was seeing.
I think it's a confluence of things. There's not a linear causality here, but for so many of us, we have suffered under the awareness of what Europeans have done on this continent since our first arrival, and for once there is this opportunity to try to make amends, to do something different. The native people have been victims of genocide since the first arrival from Spain and from England, and the other European countries thrown in too. But they have survived. And I think we need these reminders of survival when people are so concerned about the state of the Union today, that they're a great model of resilience. And their language, some of their language has survived, and they talked about the horrors of the boarding schools. They talked about the people's hands being, just terrible things being done to people for speaking their language. These were people who welcomed us to their homes. And so I think we have a lot to learn. And one of the great opportunities for any of us who went to Standing Rock was to actually engage in the turnabout, was actually to engage in not being the dominants, we white people. That we were visitors to the native land, just as our forebears were, but this time to do it differently, to listen to their wisdom. Thank God they survived, despite the blankets, despite the cold, despite the hardships, despite the killings. Yes, so we'll celebrate their survival and learn from it as times get harder everywhere. When you talked about how many more families are hungry this year in Greenfield than there were last year, I think that's not, it needs to be noticed, and to note that this is not because people don't want work, it's because we're in hard times. And the natives who have had hard times for a very long time have a lot to teach us, and not the least of which is humility and the willingness to share everything we have.
We all come from the same source, and the spirit world is real. It's right here amongst this world, and all you have to do is just want to let it in, and it'll be there. And you'll begin to see more and more how it affects everything that we experience here. And you learn to work in that world, and you understand that that source is, we're all unique expressions of that source, but we're all part of it. We're all part of it. And when I say we are one, that's what I mean. So anything you do to me, anything you do to him, her, or them, eventually you're going to be doing to your own source, your own self. And it's going to come back. Every single time it's going to come back. And that spirit world is always there. It's always visible.